I'm going to be informing you all about what capital punishment actually is, how the victims are affected, and also how we're affected as well. So, I'm sure everyone has probably seen something on the news about somebody getting convicted and sentenced to the death penalty. So, I'm going to be talking about that today. I feel that the complicated legal process and also the high cost of sentencing someone to the death penalty make it economically unsound for us. And also, I find that it's unjust because it goes against our constitutional rights. So, you may have heard of somebody on the news again who has been sentenced to the death penalty. And if you're like me, I've seen many documentaries and debates arguing both sides of the stories. Definitely, we've discussed it in school as well. And I've just informed myself on how we as citizens are affected and how the victims are affected as well. So today we're going to be discussing kind of what goes on at the death penalty, who decides it, the history of it, of course, how it affects us as citizens, and why capital punishment is truly unjust and should be abolished. So today we're going to be first off talking about the legal process of sentencing someone to death, but a little bit on the history. The actual first federal execution um, was that of Thomas Byrd in 1790. He committed a murder on the high seas, so that was the beginning of the death penalty. I believe it was by hanging. So basically, in the federal system, the United States Attorney General will be the one who decides ultimately if someone should be sentenced to the death penalty. It's a very serious sentencing, obviously, so you have to really be committing a horrendous crime. Most crimes committed that will get you to be sentencing to the death penalty would be that of murder, rape, kidnapping. You'll see a lot of the times those who are getting committed are repeating their crimes. They'll have multiple offenses added on, which is not good. But again, it's meant to protect us as citizens, and I'll go into that later as to why I don't agree with that. But next, we're going to be discussing how the death penalty affects us as American citizens and American taxpayers. So, basically, when they sentence someone to the death penalty, it drains our wallets. We are responsible to really pay for it through taxes. New York Times states that the United States spent an extra $90 million alone on capital punishment this year, which is crazy because the year isn't even over. And it's just too much money to be spending for so few people to be executed. It's coming out of our wallets. It's affecting us as citizens for something that we're not responsible for. And states go through millions of dollars winning death penalty verdicts, which require secondary trials, new witnesses, new juries, lawyers, holding grounds for the case, and also inmates who are sentenced to death row require extra security because they're high-profile inmates, and maintenance costs especially. I think that it's too expensive to be doing this. I find that it's a waste of money, and it's less expensive to actually keep someone incarcerated. And I find that it's a better punishment to keep someone incarcerated because you limit their freedoms. I find that when you were to execute someone, you're kind of setting them free of their punishment. So I'm going to go into that right now and talk about why the death penalty should be abolished and why I find it to be unjust. So I find that the death penalty is immoral. Our Constitution states that we have our human rights to not have cruel and unusual punishment. And I find that the death penalty is exactly that. I find that it goes against our constitutional right in so many ways because you're returning the favor by someone who has murdered others, but you're doing the exact same, and to this person who is still a human, and their death is a loss to humanity. The Odyssey says criminals, no matter how vile, cruel, depraved, or inhumane we think of them, are still human, and their death is still a loss to humanity, which is what I just touched on. I think that, for that to happen, you're spending all of this money, all of this time on someone who needs to really think of what they're doing, think of their actions, and instead of murdering them by what they have done, you can exonerate them. And also, another point that I'd like to touch on is in many instances, not recently, but in the past, they've executed completely innocent people. And although science today is quite accurate, there's always the chance of someone completely innocent getting executed, which is what we should avoid completely. And by putting people behind bars instead of murdering them, then there's the chance of saving someone's life who has done nothing wrong. I think that I agree with this statement completely because I find that it goes against our constitutional right, and I think that we as citizens should follow that, and we should have higher values. So today we really discussed the history of the death penalty, how it was established, and the costs it has in our economy to sentence and execute someone, and also how capital punishment is immoral and truly wrong. Also, I'm against the death penalty, but not because of sympathy for the criminals. It doesn't prevent any crime that people commit, but it costs a lot more than life in prison. And worst of all, it risks execution of innocent people.